So we begin this morning with really sad news. Longtime Maryland Congressman Elijah Cummings passed away this morning at the age of 68. The congressman's office says he died at Johns Hopkins Hospital at around 2:45 this morning due to complications from long-standing health issues. Cummings, who was born and raised in Baltimore, Maryland, where he still lived up to his death, represented Maryland's 7th congressional district since 1996. He was known for his devotion to his hometown, as well as his passion for civil rights. The son of former sharecroppers, he began his life of public service in Maryland's House of Delegates, where he served for 14 years, becoming the state's first African-American Speaker pro tem. Cummings served as chairman of the House Oversight and Reform Committee. He is survived by his wife and 3 children, and we personally are heartbroken this morning.
We are heartbroken. Elijah was a dear friend. He was a trusted colleague, and he was a fierce advocate for his constituents at home and for all of you Americans who hunger for justice and hunger for truth in these troubled times. We were honored that Elijah agreed to marry Mika and me last year. It seemed just perfect, and he was just perfect. It was so great to have him, our dear friend, there. But we're even more grateful for the public service that he so selflessly committed his life to every day of his life. He will now be mourned, and his remarkable life will be celebrated. And his work, it will be completed. That's the very least that this great country owes to Elijah Cummings during these dark days and troubled times. Willie, obviously, he had not been doing well physically, but this still comes as a shock, and there's a great hole in our hearts because he's such a dear friend, but also in Congress right now, he has played a critical role in seeking the truth, trying to get to the bottom of all the facts, of the chaos that is swirling around the White House and swirling around Washington, as well as capitals across the world. And boy, he will be missed.
Without question. What a stunner this morning. Our condolences go out first to his family, to all of his colleagues. And when I say colleagues, I mean Democrats and Republicans. He's gone out of his way, as you know very well, Joe, to befriend Republicans to get things done. My condolences to you. I know what a close friend he was to both of you. But this was a man, this is a loss for the country. This isn't about politics. Yes, he was the chairman of the Oversight Committee doing important work in this moment in our nation's history. But this is a loss for the country, a man whose parents were sharecroppers from South Carolina, moved to Baltimore for a better life for their family, watched their son grow up to become a United States congressman and the chairman of the Oversight Committee. Michael Steele, I know he was a friend of yours. Obviously, you're a Maryland guy. You worked closely with Elijah Cummings, knew him well through the years. I was just looking through some old quotes from Congressman Cummings, and just this year during the Michael Cohen hearing, he sort of reached out to Cohen, who looked sort of distraught and wasn't doing well in the hearing. And Congressman Cummings said this: when we're dancing with the angels, the question will be asked, in 2019, what did we do to make sure we kept our democracy intact? And I think he really saw that as his role at this time. He sort of reached out and comforted Michael Cohen, but also spoke to greater questions about where the country is and where the country's headed.
You know, he had his finger on a different pulse. A lot of times in politics, people, you know, just the top line stuff, you know, who's up, who's down, who's winning, who's losing. The one thing that I've learned from my experience as the former state chairman, Republican state chairman of Maryland, former lieutenant governor of Maryland, I had the opportunity to work with and battle with Elijah. And he always had his finger on the pulse of the people. He always understood what was needed, what was necessary. He cared so deeply about not just the city of Baltimore, but the state of Maryland and the country of the United States, the people of the United States. And he brought that passion to his work every day in the Congress. I remember doing, when I ran for the U.S. Senate in 2006, I was talking to him. You know, you have those moments, those chance moments where during the campaign you run into the, quote, opposition. And I looked at him and I said, look, you guys have got to go easy on me. And he looked at me and said, brother, we're always easy on you. It's about public service. And that's to me was Elijah. I mean, he understood the partisan lines and he knew where they were drawn. But again, he always had his finger on the pulse of what people needed to get through the day, to make their dreams come true. And we will miss him. Maya and the family, our hearts go out to you. The great city of Baltimore, you have lost a champion, but his spirit will remain true. And you need to remain true to that spirit, just as Willie noted, his words of encouragement and service.
Yeah. You know, Mike, there is such partisanship in Washington, D.C., but Elijah really did. He moved beyond that. He transcended that. When we worked together, he was ranking member. I was chairman of a committee, and we were fighting for long-term health care for all federal employees. And it seemed that we were actually fighting with staff members on our own side who said, you can't make a deal with the other side. You can't do it. Leadership will just absolutely pound you. This is not the time to do it. And Elijah, you could trust his word. In fact, I trusted him more than I trusted people on my own side, and he trusted me more because we gave each other our words, we had each other's back, and we got it done when nobody thought it was going to get done. And, you know, as you know, sadly, over the past 20 years or so, that didn't happen so much in Washington, D.C. You always had to watch your back. I never did, because this guy was more than a close friend. He was a man of his word.
Joe, Willie and I were fortunate in that we got to know him because of your friendship with him, because of Mika's friendship with him. We got to know him in a way we don't get to know a lot of members of Congress. And one of the things that resonates about Elijah Cummings in a world, Washington, D.C., filled every day with daily bouts of horrific polarization that verges on sounding like hate when you look at it from the outside. Elijah Cummings stood every day for fairness. He stood every day for equity. He stood every day for moving the ball forward, not just for his city, Baltimore. And people look at congressmen and they say, oh, you know, or senators, they say, oh, Ed Markey from Massachusetts or Chuck Schumer from New York. But Elijah Cummings wasn't from Baltimore. He was of Baltimore. He went home, I think, nearly every night. He lived with the people that he represented, fought for the people in the great city that he represented that has been through so much. But during the course of his days in Washington, he stood for something and represented something that is unique: fairness and a measured approach to things. He fought fiercely for the things he believed in, that he felt that would improve this country on a daily basis. I mean, look at his relationship with Mark Meadows and Trey Gowdy during the hearings on Hillary Clinton. He was fair. He fought for fairness. Even when he was minority chair, when he was majority chair, he was the same. That's, I think, a voice that is going to be astoundingly missed.
And Joe and Mika, I'm thinking back to another moment earlier this year in an oversight committee hearing where Congresswoman Rashida Tlaib accused Mark Meadows of being a racist, and they were going back and forth in that room. Who was the voice who said, hold on now, wait a minute, let's talk this out? We don't hear a lot of that. We don't see it out in public view, for sure, in Washington and our national politics right now. And he had a line he would always say. He'd say in interviews with us, he'd go, come on now. Like, let's go, America.
Yeah.
Come on. Come on. Let's be reasonable here. Let's talk this out. Come on now. I think that's a great refrain for our times and a good way to honor Elijah Cummings.
He was
And-
impatient about what was so basic, patriotism.
Yeah.
It was about the country. And why would we ask him to be the one to marry us? Because Elijah Cummings, in every way, was everything we aspire to be every day.
Yeah, he was.
Every day.
And as Willie said, that "come on now,"
I can
let's
hear
get
it.
going. That is a good refrain for our times. We'll keep talking about Elijah throughout the
show
show.
you those moments as well.
I'll tell you- Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.